A mile below Summit, the line runs along a rocky ridge. Always there is wind. Sometimes it is gentle, at others it is fierce and very dangerous. Then all passenger trains stop at Devil's Back Station. But whatever the weather, stores trains and rescue trains must get through.
Wilbert Awdry's railway series is full of great stories about steam engines facing trials. Actual trials, that is, not just the oversimplified friendship problems that permeate so much storytelling for kids nowadays. No, these guys face their own hubris, their own physical weakness, and even the reality of death. Very often, though, the trial they face is nature, the wind, and the cold, and the rain. Percy's Promise, Gallant Old Engine, Edward's Exploit, they all have similar plot lines. An engine sets out on a journey, the conditions are bad, they break down in some way, but with great determination, they pull through and bring their train home. But there's one story like this that stands, in my opinion, far above the rest. In fact, the story we'll be talking about today is, I think, Awdry's best, and one of the best and deepest children's stories ever written. I'm talking about Devil's Back. The story Devil's Back is the finale piece to probably the weirdest book in the railway series. Mountain Engines, Book 19, takes place on a railway running up Culdee Fell, the tallest mountain on Sodor. Inspired by the Snowdon Mountain Railway in Wales, this is a part of the island that we never see again. Not in the books, not in the TV series, and by the way, it made finding enough interesting footage for this video an absolute nightmare. Prepare for copious amounts of real-world clips throughout. Anyway, Devil's Back is my favourite railway series story, and I want to explain why. More interestingly, I want to compare it to another fan favourite I just mentioned, Edward's Exploit. People love that story, and rightly so, it's really well written. But Devil's Back is better, and there's only really one reason why. Okay, that's not entirely true, it wouldn't be a Thomas Cynic video without 3 points, so there are a couple of small reasons that do elevate this story to the next level, and we'll just take a minute to acknowledge those before I make my main point. Reason 1. The stakes.
There's been a climbing accident, explained his driver. Culdee and Catherine are bringing up a doctor and a rescue team. But Catherine's too light to stand this gale, so we'll go up ourselves. The water and the sandbags will steady us, and if you can keep going, we have a good chance of getting through. Can you do it?
This is, I think, the only story in the railway series where the well-being and perhaps the life of a human character is in serious danger. No doubt Awdry had read some of the pretty terrible accounts from the Snowdon Mountain Railway, which had an early history mired with these kinds of accidents, both railway and non-railway related. Even today, the Snowdon National Park as a whole claims an average of 8 lives a year. This is the first thing that elevates Devil's Back above Edward's Exploit. In Edward's Exploit, what happens if Edward fails? Oh no, a train of enthusiasts won't get home. While Edward's struggle is heroic, I mean, look at this guy, he can kind of afford to fail, nobody's going to die. But Devil's Back is a different story. Reason 2. The setting.
Leaving the shelter of the station, the full force of the gale struck him like a blow. Culdee and Catherine saw him waver. Go it, they yelled. Number 6 heard them for a moment. The next he was battling on alone.
Edward's Exploit takes place on a random patch of railway line. Devil's Back takes place on Devil's Back. Actually, I do think the setting is really significant here, particularly its name. Mountain Engines, interestingly, is absolutely covered in spiritual terminology, and I find this fascinating. A lot of names in this book have some kind of religious significance. Culdee, most obviously, means companion of God, and that name is of course central to the book, and its wise counsellor of a main character. Godred, very ironically, means God's peace, and of course is central in being a kingly name, something we'll look at more in a second. You've also got the station of Shiloh, a biblical city name. You've got the mountain of Culdee Fell itself, confirmed by the iOS book to be the ancient place where Saint Machen, the patron saint of Sodor, lived as a hermit. His cave was later used as a cathedral hideout when one Oliver Cromwell attacked the island, and is a place of pilgrimage to this day. The point is that this setting, this mountain, is evocative. It's a spiritual heartland of the island. And most importantly for us, there's the name Devil's Back. In the story, this ridge is very much a place of temptation for our main character, who we'll meet shortly. This is incredibly effective, as said main character is alone up there. Edward, while valiant, had the very vocal support of his crew, his driver, his fireman, and multiple coaches of passengers all cheering him on. But our main character isn't given that help. And the main character of Devil's Back is the real reason why this is the best Railway Series story. Reason 3. The Struggler.
He didn't feel so brave now. All he wanted was to get out of the vicious, stinging, icy wind which seemed to come at him from all directions. The truck lurched and swayed as the wind tore at it. It whimpered and groaned as though in pain. She wants to go back, thought number 6, and so do I.
Lord Harry is, get this, Wilbert Awdry's most cleverly written character. Yup, that was a thing I just said. He appears in 2 stories and is never seen again, and yet he is written so well. Now, notice I didn't say the most complex character. That's probably Henry, or the most transformed, that's probably Gordon, or the most fun, that's probably James. But Lord Harry has something that none of them do. Remember how I said that names were important in this book? Well, Lord Harry is an incredibly important name. You see, in Edward's exploit, we know Edward is going to push through. I mean, it's Edward. What he does is amazing, but it's not altogether unexpected. It's what Edward does. He pushes through. With Lord Harry, however, Awdry wrote a character who seems to have absolutely nothing going for him, and that starts with his name. Earlier in Mountain Engines, we hear of an engine called Godred, the railway's former number 1. And Godred was proud and took risks and was ultimately dismembered. And yes, he was dismembered. The iOS book is very clear about that. Yes, Culdee is kind of a cannibal. Anyway, Godred's fall came from his arrogance. And where did his arrogance come from? Being named after a king. And so, in the very next story, when a character called Lord Harry comes along and starts acting all high and mighty, all kingly, we all think that we've seen this before. His name is actually a really big mark against him. He's just repeating Godred's mistakes, and we have no reason to believe he won't go the same way. Lord Harry's big flaw is that he is way too sure of himself, and takes a ton of risks. This is where Awdry's characterization shines, because he pulls a writing trick with Lord Harry that I don't think happens anywhere else in the Railway series. Lord Harry's biggest moral flaw, his overconfidence, becomes his greatest strength when he channels it correctly. Lord Harry's push up Devil's Back is one huge risk, one huge gamble. The text is so descriptive of how vulnerable and exposed to the elements he is. The former risk-taker now has to take a risk he doesn't want to take, knowing what it might cost him. I think this is why Awdry chose to have the manager take away Lord Harry's name and just call him Number 6 at the start of the Devil's Back story. He is a lord no longer. Even Godred, when he was being cut up, never lost his name. Everything that Lord Harry boasted about is gone. He's at his lowest point, and that's what makes his redemption so satisfying, as he hauls that rescue train up the ridge.
She wants to go back, thought number 6, and so do I, but we can't. The manager's relying on me to save those climbers. We must go through. We must.
Here we see Lord Harry, or Number 6, or whoever he really is, taking a risk not for his own convenience, but for someone else's safety. We'd expect that of Edward, of Rhaenys, maybe even of Percy, but Lord Harry? No, I wouldn't back this guy. Not only that, he's in a much worse situation than those other examples, with much higher stakes, in a setting that isn't just physically brutal, but perhaps a place of spiritual temptation, and he still pushes through.
Slowly, doggedly he struggled on, till in shelter again on the other side, they climbed the final steep ascent and rode triumphant into Summit Station.
After the events of Devil's Back, Lord Harry is renamed to Patrick, the name of one of the climbers he saved. Given the importance of names that we've discussed so much today, I hope you can see that this is such a fitting ending. And although I doubt Audrey intended this, the name Patrick works on a deeper level. It means nobleman. Godred, the engine named after a king, died due to his own stupidity. Lord Harry comes along and makes similar mistakes, and his rank is stripped from him as he just becomes number 6. But after his heroism on Devil's Back, that rank of noble is quietly reinstated, and in the name Patrick, he is a lord once again. Now, that's just a theory that, as I say, probably wasn't intended, but I hope this brief video essay explains why I feel Devil's Back is the greatest story that Wilbert Awdry ever wrote.
My friend Patrick, he said, hurt himself helping me, but he's mending now thanks to you and your brave engine. We'd all be proud if you'd call him Patrick too. The manager smiled. Well, number 6, would you like that? He asked. Oh, sir, yes, please. Patrick and the others are all good friends. He is still brave, still ready to take risks when needed, but he knows now that it is stupid to take them just for the sake of showing off.